Planning Commission meeting to order. Could you please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
May I please have a roll call?
Commissioner Marsters?
Present.
Commissioner Silverman?
Present.
Commissioner Harper Pedersen is absent this evening due to a family emergency, and Vice Chair Bergman? Present. And Chair Gutierrez?
Present. So we're having a little AV problems over here, so we're probably going to join you guys in the audience for the presentation, but let me start off with public comment. Public comment is limited to items not on the agenda. The commission may briefly respond to statements made or questions posed as allowed by the Brown Act. However, the commission's general policy is to refer items to staff for attention or have a matter placed on a future commission's agenda for a more comprehensive action or report. Is there anyone here to speak on an item that's not on the agenda? Seeing none, let's move on to approval of minutes. Anybody have any corrections or? I don't.
Move approval. Second.
Can I have a roll call vote, please, on that?
Commissioner Marsters?
Yes.
Commissioner Silverman?
A.
Vice Chair Bergman?
Yes.
And Chair Gutierrez?
A. Just because David likes to mix it up so much. Okay, public hearing. Procedure for public hearing. Staff will present a report on the history, physical features, et cetera, on the application, follow with the staff's recommendations. The applicant will make a presentation. Thereafter, interested members of the community may speak on the proposal. When all interested parties have had an opportunity to be heard, the hearing will be closed, and no further discussion from the floor can be held. The commission will then consider the evidence and make its recommendation. If you challenge a public hearing item in court, you may be limited to raising only the those issues you or someone else raised at the public hearing described in this notice, the public notice, or in written correspondence delivered to the city at or prior to the public hearing. Speakers should fill out a speaker's form found by the door and hand it to the recording secretary prior to addressing the commission. The speaker should come up to the microphone to speak since the meeting is being recorded. This will assist staff in preparing the minutes. The first item is item A, 2115 White Oak Way, APN 051-281-300. Consideration request for approval of tentative parcel map, design review, and protected tree removal permit. And I believe there's a staff presentation. Laura? You guys want to turn around? Or you want to?
I think I'm in the best position. It's not that bad.
I can say.
Thank you and good evening. I'm Laura Russell, Senior Planner, and I'll be presenting the project to you this evening.
Sorry that we have our backs turned to you too, so.
No problem, as long as you can see the presentation. Thank you. The site is on White Oak Way, approximately where Oakhurst Avenue ends. The property is 10,504 square feet. It's currently developed with a single-family home. It's surrounded by other single-family homes, and the school is up kind of to the right at the end of the picture there. The zoning is RS6, and the general plan land use designation is single-family. The applicant is proposing to demolish the existing house, divide the property to create 2 lots, build 2 new single-family homes, and remove 3 protected trees with the project. And as a little bit of background for the Planning Commission, as well as the audience, the applicant originally applied for just the subdivision action. They met with members of the community, and the community really wanted to know what they might be proposing there, what type of homes might be developed or proposed at that site. So the applicant put the subdivision application on hold and developed the house plans so that the subdivision and the homes could be reviewed together. So that's why all of those actions are before the Planning Commission tonight. Otherwise, typically individual single-family homes would be reviewed by the Residential Design Review Committee. So the first request is for the subdivision to create 2 new lots. When evaluating a proposed subdivision, we refer to Title 17 of the Municipal Code. This title establishes a minimum lot size for new lots of 5,000 square feet and a minimum width of 40 feet. The proposed lots with this project have an area of 5,252 square feet and a width of 47.75 feet. You can also see from the map that's shown here on the screen and also included in your staff report that there's a range of lot sizes in the vicinity of the proposed project. The applicant is proposing 2 new houses. Parcel 1 on the right-hand side has a craftsman style of architecture. They are proposing 2,945 square feet of living area, a 441 square foot 2-car garage, and so their total floor area is proposed to be 3,386. Parcel 2 on the left-hand side has a contemporary farmhouse style of architecture. They're proposing 2,856 square feet of living area, 441 square foot 2-car garage. So the total floor area is 3,297. And I just wanted to point out, as the Planning Commission is aware, the way we calculate floor area numbers includes the garage. And so that's different sometimes than the numbers people use in the real estate industry. So here are the floor plans for parcel number 1. On the right-hand side, I've outlined the main floor plan in red so that it's a little bit more clear in the presentation for you. You can see that at the front of the house, there's a portion that's right at the 5-foot setback line, but the rear portion is actually set back more, approximately 9 feet. So there is some articulation there and a little bit increased side yard setback. On the second floor, you can see on the left-hand side, and that's also shown in red, and you can see that it's set in on the house on the roof plan, and it's also set towards the left, so towards the other new house that's proposed. These are the elevations for that house. You can see the building articulation, the roof lines. They're using some hips in the middle as well as some gable ends, which are often seen in the craftsman style. You can also see the mix of materials that they're using to break up some of the massing, with the horizontal siding along the bottom and the shingles through the majority of the rest of the house. These are the floor plans for parcel 2, which is the more farmhouse style. The second floor is minimized. You can see that in the left-hand side. So it fits primarily within the roof line of the house. So they've done that to minimize any potential privacy impacts and to also minimize the massing of the house. There's also very limited windows on the second floor to minimize any privacy impacts. So here in the elevations, you can see how that floor plan kind of comes together with the dormers that project out in the roof line just to provide a few windows for that second story. Here are the numerical development standards within the municipal code, with the first column being the requirements for the RS6 district, proposed parcel number 1, and then proposed parcel number 2. You might want to note the proposed height. Parcel number 1 is proposed to be 25 feet 5 inches, and the second house is 25 feet 10 inches, so that is below the maximum of 28 feet. The lot coverage is proposed to be 45% for parcel 1 and 47% for parcel 2, where 50% is the maximum. They've also met or exceeded the setback requirements. As I showed you on the floor plan, there's some building articulation that actually increases the setbacks beyond the numbers that are shown here. What we provided to you on the slide is the closest point for any of those elevations. The RS6 zoning requirements also have supplemental regulations which are related to design. Both of these houses comply with those requirements. The key ones are related to having a prominent entry. There's a required front porch size. They're required to have quality materials, window trim, and architectural articulation. And all of these standards have been met with these designs. So I'll move on now to the protected tree removal permit. There's an arborist report, which is included as attachment 4 within your staff report. And here on the slide, what I did is I just made those yellow circles bigger so that they would be more easy to see here in the council chambers. So those yellow circles are the locations of the protected trees that are proposed to be removed with the project. There are a total of 9 trees that are currently on site, and there's also numerous trees on the surrounding properties that kind of contribute to that overall sense of the tree canopy within the neighborhood. So there's quite a few large trees around the site. So in this case, the arborist also gave us some details on those trees and outlined which trees are on this subject site and which ones are on the neighboring properties, just to make that clear. So there's 3 protected trees that are proposed to be removed. They're shown here. So tree number 2 is the mimosa tree. It's a multiple trunk type of a tree. So the way that we measure that for the criteria makes it a significant tree that needs a tree protection or tree removal permit. The next one is tree number 7, which is an ornamental pear tree. And then tree number 12 at the back right corner is a Hollywood juniper. Also of note, it's detailed in your staff report, there's a large oak tree that's at the rear of the property that is within a public utility easement. There is a sewer line that runs through that easement. The applicant is not proposing to remove that tree. However, in working with the Public Works Department in preparation of this application, they indicated that they do have some concern about the location of that tree, given the public utility easement. So we've added a condition of approval so that the applicant will have to investigate the kind of condition of the tree as well as that sewer pipe and see that it's not doing any damage to the city's infrastructure. So the applicant is here, and they're prepared to discuss their outreach process with the Planning Commission. Staff has received really numerous comments on this project, and we've included all of the ones that we received in advance within attachment 6 of your staff report. We also received another 5 or 6 comments which have been provided to you on the dais this evening. And I wanted to note, too, that some of the comments were received before the houses were designed. So you'll see as you're looking through the packet, the date stamps on all of those forms. So you can kind of see which ones were submitted to us when it was just a subdivision, and then some of the comments came in later when there were house designs associated with the subdivision. Those concerns really centered around a number of issues, and that was kind of this question about replacing one existing house with 2 houses, the potential for traffic, concerns related to the tree removal, and the idea that the houses may be out of scale with the neighborhood. So that really is what a lot of the comments were about, and I think there's a number of residents that are interested in speaking to you tonight on this project. So this is the motion that you would make should you choose to approve this application. I'm available for any questions that you have for staff. The applicant is also present this evening and would like to make a presentation. So thank you very much for your consideration, and I'm available for any questions.
Any questions for staff right now? Okay. Applicant? And if there's anybody that hasn't filled out a speaker card that wants to speak, if you could fill one out and give it to us up here, that'd be great.
Hi, my name is, excuse me. My name is Matt Niasmich. I'm one of the applicants for the project. Laura hit on a lot of my points, but I'll just maybe expound on a little. We did do a couple outreach meetings with the immediate neighbors. I think there was, you know, the neighbors within, I think, 150-foot radius of the, or 300 feet radius of the property. I think it was 53 neighbors on the mailing list. We met on August 20th last year, and at that time, like Laura said, it was for subdivision only. So we came to the meeting and, you know, sent a mailing out basically with a site plan that showed these 2 big, giant, you know, check boxes on it. And, you know, the boxes represent, you know, potential building area. So those are all the minimum required front setbacks, garage setbacks, side setbacks, rear setbacks. And that, you know, those boxes, you know, they're big boxes there. And we got a lot of comments at that first meeting. I think it kind of put the picture in people's mind that, that there was a potential of some big stuff being built there. So the big concerns, there were a range of concerns we had that first day, but the big ones were about, you guys are we're worried that you guys are gonna build McMansions here, mega houses, tract homes. They're not gonna be compatible with the neighborhood. And then each of the two neighbors on either side had very specific privacy concerns as well. And then trees came up as an issue. So it was, pretty unanimous that first meeting that there was concern out there. And, kind of the question, the thing I remember people asking is, how can you ask us to support this without us seeing what you guys are planning here? So it was pretty obvious for us to make that step of pulling the application, coming up with a design, and going back to the neighbors when we had something that we thought was more in line with what their goals were. So we did go back to design, and we really focused on the comments of the neighbors, and especially minimizing the impacts of the privacy to the adjacent neighbors on each side, and really kind of minimizing the scale and mass of these houses. And we came to this meeting to that next meeting with this rendering, and we were pretty excited. We thought we were successful on most of those counts. Laura went through kind of the key points here, but this is the one on the right, the Craftsman Parcel 1. Again, we took the scale down. The height is less than it could be. It's a simple roof line. Setbacks are bigger than are required. The square footage is lower than it could have been if we really maxed it out. This elevation on the right, which is adjacent to our neighbor there, we really made a point to minimize all the windows on the second level and get the sills above eye height there. And we put in this tree for a little extra privacy screening there. Parcel 2, this one, we almost exclusively were just focused on privacy concerns in the whole design process. The neighbor to the left, I feel for them. Our current house is 30 feet off the property line, so they've really enjoyed that setback for a long time that they've been living there. So they were very clear, from the get-go that they didn't want a big facade right on the property line, and they didn't want people looking into their yards. So we really focused on that one here. So like Laura said, it's almost like a 1.5-story house where the whole second story is built into the roof line of that second story. There are no windows facing that left property line. The only window there is a staircase, and again, we raised it up. We tried to minimize the size of it. We're putting in this new property line fence, 6 foot tall with a foot of lattice above it, and we're proposing to put this line of privacy screening trees along that line. So this is kind of a rough rendering. I hadn't submitted it before, but the rendering guy did this, and you kind of get the feel if you're standing on that left neighboring property looking up. I mean, if I'm thinking, I'm standing in that backyard and I'm anywhere close to that property line fence, you're looking up at that roof line. It's such a quick sloping roof away from, it slopes up so slowly away from the property line. By the time your kind of eye hits that roof line, it's going to be pretty far off the property line. I really see, we try to avoid anything really going straight up and kind of looking over. And I think we were very successful. And then, honestly, since we were so focused on privacy, we were very happy with the way aesthetically it came out. We thought it's kind of a unique, different looking house, but a beautiful house. So we were actually excited, and it was kind of a surprise since we were so focused on the privacy issues in the design process. We went back, during that process, and really, this is, these new check boxes are the lot coverage of the proposed designs, and the boxes are obviously the proposed lots, and we kind of looked at the immediately adjacent neighborhood. It's hard to tell, but it looks, relatively compatible with the neighborhood in terms of lot size and lot coverage. We got a decent sized front yard and backyard, and even some articulation on the side setbacks. So we feel like it's different than what's there, but it is compatible with the immediately adjacent neighborhood. Laura went through this, pretty well. There are 2 heritage trees on the site. There's an oak tree on parcel 2 that she discussed that's in the rear sewer easement, and there's a cedar tree on parcel 1. We do propose to protect those, and they're pretty far set away from the footprint of the house, but in the case of the cedar, we did kind of modify the design to work around it. And we do propose to protect those and retain those. These are pictures of the 3 protected trees to be removed. We really don't want to take out any trees, but the location of them and kind of especially the mimosas, the way they kind of spread, they're almost like a bush with the multiple branches and trunks, and they really kind of, they just the size of them and the shape of them, it made, our plans kind of not feasible. So we did, we do, propose to remove these, but we did propose to add those mature line of screening trees, which we think will be actually more effective for privacy. You can kind of see on tree 2 and 7, those are along the left property line existing now. They're a little sparse. They're nice trees, but in terms of privacy, they're probably not the most effective. I think what we put in will be more effective. So yeah, I think we're planning to put in a total of 8 new trees, including the 5 along the left property line. So October 7th, we had our second neighborhood meeting, and there was no consensus. I wouldn't say you never have a full consensus, but there were a few people that came up to us and said, "Wow, I couldn't see it, but we think you did a beautiful job." There were a few people that came up and said, I appreciate the communication that you've done with us. I appreciate the effort. I see, some specific measures you made. And there were still a few people, especially a neighbor, on the left, that were still opposed to it. But compared to the first meeting, we kind of felt the temperature was a lot lower, and that there was kind of an acceptance and appreciation for the effort we'd done. And we felt like we'd come up with something that was appropriate, and we thought there was a little bit of acceptance within the neighborhood. I'll go through this real quick, but just who we are. My brother Dan and I are the active people in our business. We're a family business. We both live in Burlingame. I know that's different than San Carlos. We're not San Carlos residents, but we've done jobs in Burlingame, Belmont, Menlo Park. We hope to do these here. We consider this, at least work-wise, our neighborhood, and we do really take seriously the opinions of the residents, and we're not just trying to profit here. We are trying to build something beautiful, and we think there is a demand and a need for this kind of housing. So we are we're a small company. We finish usually 1 to 2 houses per year, so we're not building tract homes. We're really focused on detail. We're a spec builder. I mean, here's an example of our last project in Burlingame, and you can see kind of the wood beams and the kind of the unusual tiling in the bathroom. It's a different style house, but it's an example that we're kind of focusing on detail and trying to be a little different and unique. And that's the way we do business. We're not just mass production builder, trying to make a quick buck. We want to build beautiful things that, families and people can live in and enjoy. This is a project we did. We finished in 2014 in Belmont, and it was similar to this White Oak Way development in that it was these two lots were owned by one family for a long time, 60, 70 years, and we developed 2 houses on these lots, and it was a neighborhood that hadn't seen this kind of multiple story development in any recent times, and it was very well received by neighbors, and we found 2 great families to move in there. We actually were given the 2014 Beautiful Belmont Award, which recognized, our efforts in, helping to improve the neighborhood there. So I think this is similar, but, our goal is to do something nice here. I think, just in closing, we think that we have a beautiful design here, and we think we've been successful in designing homes that give a modern layout that kind of have the features and the size that a lot of buyers and people want nowadays, but are still appropriate for the neighborhood and sensitive to the concerns of the general neighborhood, and address some of the specific concerns of the immediately adjacent neighborhood. So, I just want to stress again, we think we're doing something good here, and we think we're building something that families or people, new people can enjoy, and it'll revitalize the neighborhood. And they're good, high quality, beautiful houses, and we're excited for the project. Thank you.
So just one question. The last outreach you did was in October, or was there one after that?
I'm sorry.
Last outreach that you did, was that in October? Was there anything this year that you done outreach-wise?
No, I believe we submitted for planning in November, maybe. So after the last outreach, we tweaked some things and just went in for submittal. So I think it's been a couple months since we applied. Okay. So yeah, no, that was the last outreach.
I have a question. I don't know whether it's best addressed to the developer or to staff. I wanted to get a sense of where the driveway is currently on the property prior to development, and where the new driveway is proposed relative to Oakhurst Avenue on the house that's closest to Oakhurst Avenue. I don't know if you have anything that can help me with that.
Yeah, you might be able to pull it up on Google Maps. I have it up right here, but
I can tell you about the existing driveway. It's very similar to the driveway for Parcel 1, the right house, the Craftsman. That's the very close to this existing location, I believe.
So it's currently set off of Oakhurst Way?
Yeah, it's set up to the right. If you're looking at it, the house is straight on. So it's similar to where the driveway is for the Parcel 1, the one on the right. And where this second driveway is in relation to Oakhurst, I would have to look at the plans exactly.
There's a couple
probably
of
where the walkway is, maybe.
Yeah, there's a couple of sheets of the plans that might help. There's a survey that's included in the last page. That's actually the tentative parcel map, but it's a survey underneath. That one's upside down, though, because it's prepared by the engineer. So on that one, White Oak Way is...
Upside down because it's prepared by the engineer?
It happens to be prepared by an engineer. White Oak Way goes across the top of that one, and you can see the concrete driveway is shown at that location. So if you kind of look at the location map combined with that survey, you can kind of see approximately where it lines up. There's not one plan that shows the exact relationship to Oakhurst. Then you can see on the site plan for the newly proposed houses, you can see that that driveway is in approximately the same place. And then the second new driveway is going to be closer towards the intersection of Oakhurst.
By the concrete walkway? Approximate location.
Yeah.
Has anyone from the city looked from a safety standpoint at the location of the new driveway relative to Oakhurst Way?
It was routed to our Public Works engineering staff, and they did do a detailed plan review on this, so they did not give us any specific concerns related to the location of the driveway.
Okay.
They looked at the utilities and a number of other things.
Okay.
Can we quickly go back to the slide that you showed with the neighborhood compatibility? So you drew a circle, and I'm back here and I can't read any of those numbers. Are those just street addresses?
Yeah.
Okay.
The lot coverage, we didn't have access to actual information anywhere. It's kind of just based off satellite images.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, I've got quite a bit of speaker cards. If anybody else would like to speak, if you can fill out a speaker card. The first speaker that I have is Kevin O'Connor.
All right, thank you. So I just wanted to, Kevin O'Connor, 2004 White Oak Way. So we just wanted to go on the record as being opposed to having 2 large houses built on that lot. Not anti-development, and would be okay with considering 1 house on the lot with preserving the heritage trees. Some redevelopment in the area is healthy, but an increasing number of homeowners, many of which are in the back and throughout White Oak neighborhood, are becoming concerned whether the code is keep pace with the market changes to adequately support the general plan. Definitely subdividing this lot will change the fabric of both the block and the neighborhood, both in terms of density and size of the houses. There are no other houses of that height around in that area. Also within the general plan itself, the city states that one of the specific purposes of the residential district is to ensure the scale and design of new development and alterations to existing structures are compatible with surrounding homes. Some stats, the square footage of the lots bordering 2115 White Oak have a total of 40,150 square feet for 6 homes. So subdividing that would put a 7th home, so it is a R6 area, so that's, that changes all the math in that R6 zoning area. So in the 6 homes per square acre, it would be 43,560 square feet, and that would exceed it. Even if you stretched it out to the houses along that street, it still wouldn't meet the R6 zoning. It creates higher density than is the idea of the general plan, as the lots around it are under the average of 7,260 square feet to achieve 6 per square acre. So really you have 7 homes would have an average of 5,800 square feet. So it seems from looking at this is much more dense than the general plan is asking for. Let's see, also the original neighborhood certainly called for some 10,000 square foot lots to be scattered around the White Oak neighborhood. And this is in fact the only 10,000 square foot lot on the 27 on that block. So that would be 100% loss of 10,000 square foot lots. Also, there'll be a number of more vehicles. You can see it's a block and a half from the school. It's already a densely trafficked area as well as parking. And it seems like changes to the building code since 2011 tried to allow larger homes on smaller lots intended to help existing homeowners remodel their homes. But it creates this unexpected result of developers coming and seeking to build huge homes on tiny lots, and then also subdividing the lots due to the increased property prices. So, taking out trees and space and putting in the largest homes allowed. So I think that's really my main points. And I think, you're really looking at siding with the neighbors, all of which everyone I've spoken to is opposed to this, and as opposed to, kind of developers developing it. So thanks.
Thank you. Next speaker is Rick Tennyson.
Yes, I'm Rick Tennyson. I live at 2061 White Oak, and I just want to be on the record that I'm very much opposed to this thing. When I bought my house, the neighbors next to me, Betty, who was a great old gal, she had her house tore down and rebuilt, and they put a beautiful ranch-style house there, 1-story, same size lot. Now, what you guys are seeing here, what the proposal is, re-energize my neighborhood. What's that all about? The developers, he's in Burlingame. We have a great neighborhood, and I don't want 2 twin towers sitting there looking at me every day I drive home. Nobody on this board is going to be looking at this house when I'm driving up to it. You guys are living somewhere else. Now look at that sewer line runs down through my backyard. There's going to be probably 4 bedrooms. I didn't hear that. Am I correct on understanding there are going to be 4 bedrooms in each one of these houses? Okay, so that's potentially 8 bedrooms, 3,000 square feet. Mine's barely 1,800. They start flushing all those toilets. What's going to do to my sewer line going on the back? The proposal shows those houses there. There's a big old fire hydrant out there, and so this potentially could be about 6, 8, maybe 9 cars parked out there, and I don't know if they're going to park in front of the fire hydrant or what. When we bought the house, I grew up in San Carlos. I've been here longer than anybody in this room. I was here since 1952, and it's ludicrous. I can't even believe this is even being considered. This is a monstrosity. It's twin towers. My house is 1,800. My neighbor next to me is 1,800, and you guys are proposing to put 2 houses on this lot with potentially 8 bedrooms. I'm thinking about what's going to be going on with the car parking and all that. Nobody hardly ever uses their garage anymore. Anyway, there's a whole bunch I could say, but there's a lot of people here who want to have something to say. But I'm on the record, me and the wife, that we're totally opposed to what's going on here, okay? Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, James Sherba.
Jim Sherba, 2005 White Oak Way. The developer had some fine drawings there of these homes, but what was not present there was the overwhelming nature of these homes against those that are currently in the neighborhood. Mr. Tennyson mentioned the fire hydrant that was eliminated. That I couldn't get the scale on that, but there would possibly be no parking in front of the easternmost house because of the fire hydrant there. No parking at all. White Oak Way is currently a pretty crowded street with White Oak School about a block and a half away, with the cars parked directly across each other on the street. It's effectively a one-way street during school days. You can't get 2 cars past there. So we've got increased traffic risk there. A lot of kids walking to school, crossing the streets and so forth, even at that intersection on Oakhurst there and White Oak Way. A lot of young kids. White Oak School is kindergarten to 4th grade, so you've got very young children there. Protected trees. I've been in my house 30 years. I have a heritage white oak in front, probably about 4 feet in diameter. Costly tree to maintain. I've been doing it for 30 years. I like the tree. Kind of take exception that we're going to be removing heritage trees when I've taken responsibility for the last 30 years to keep in front of the community the benefit of this large heritage white oak that the street, the neighborhood is named after. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next speaker, Susan Tall.
Hi, I'm Susan Tall. I submitted some materials. I don't know if you guys have them here for my talk today. I'm going to try to keep it short and simple. I live on Oakhurst. I, too, have lived in San Carlos most of my life. Last graduating class of San Carlos High. So I know San Carlos well, and I've seen what it's gone through over the years, over the decades. And what's happening today is to this neighborhood, possibly, and to San Carlos as a whole, I think is one of the worst things that's happened in the decades that I've been around. I just think it's horrible what's happening to our community. So I'm just going to make, I want to make 2 main points. One is regarding the staff report that I found incomplete and flawed and conclusory in many regards. And I also want to make the point about the public outreach, and that the public seems to be overwhelmingly against this proposal. So I'm asking that the proposal be denied in whole. So I just want to speak just quickly about the general plan and municipal code, because it seems when I read the staff report that certain parts of that have been focused on and certain parts selectively ignored. If you look at both, and they should be read hand in hand, there are numerous instances where the character, the appearance, and the conformity of the properties are supposed to be taken into account. And there's also numerous mentions of the appropriateness of scale, mass, and heights. So if I turn to now the staff report, which to me was split up into two main parts. One was the parcel map analysis. There were 10 findings, none of which touched on any of those points about scale, mass, compatibility, and suitability to the neighborhood. If I go now to the design review, there are findings A through E, and only at finding E is that part discussed. And again, it's given pretty short shrift. And the findings were sweeping, generic, and conclusory. And so there's no transparency to what the actual analysis was. And I reproduced some quotes here, and the conclusions were the overall design and massing of the two homes are complementary to the surrounding neighborhood. And the project details are internally consistent and contribute to an attractive built environment. I have no idea how that conclusion's been reached, and I think the neighborhood would be interested in what that analysis was. I provided a map of the area, and I used the map that was in the packet. I think that's the notice area. And just to give a visual of the square footage, to the best of my knowledge, of the houses in that area. And as you can see, almost 75% of those are less than 2,000 square feet. And we're talking about two houses that are 3,300 plus and 3,200 plus. The only other house on that one block that is anywhere close to that is almost 200 square feet less than that. And that, as someone mentioned, is a single family home. So I'm not sure how a conclusion can be reached that this is compatible and fits in with the neighborhood, because these two houses are completely out of scale with anything that's there. The public outreach, I'd just like to say, and the data I provided in my material was based on what was in the packet, and from what I could tell, of the respondents, more than 2/3 opposed this proposal in whole. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker card is Raymond and Joyce DiMattei.
I provided PDF. Do you have them? And how can I display them?
So I'll go ahead and bring it up in just a
Okay. Yes.
Is it the top
It's-
or the middle?
It's the top. Thank you very much. My name is Joyce DiMattei, and I live with my husband Ray at 2065 White Oak. We're on the downslope of the proposed 2115 White Oak Way development. And we oppose the building two homes, and we're asking that the Planning Commission deny the application to subdivide 2115. We're not opposed to building two homes. This is a slide of the proposed two homes. There's over 10,000 square feet lots plus. If lots that are 10,000 square feet or a little more are split in the White Oaks area, the lot density will be exceeded. The remodel home down the street from us at 2033 is not quite 10,000 square foot lot. And it's a one-story rancher, about 3,000 square foot home. It fits in really great with the neighborhood, and it has the same neighborhood character as the other houses. 2115 White Oak and the 5 property parcels bordering it total of 40,150 square feet. By adding a seventh home, this takes the area out of zoning compliance with the general plan. The next slide, this slide shows our home at the left and the leftmost proposed home on the right. You'll notice that the scale difference, our home is a one-story rancher. The new home will create shade, a loss of sunlight, a loss of privacy, traffic, and congestion. The proposed homes aren't appropriate for our neighborhood. They stick out like an eyesore. They don't fit in. They're not. They don't fit in. They don't fit in with the neighborhood character. I'm going to skip this next slide, but it lists the San Carlos part of the municipal code, and basically what the part of this code, the purposes of it, it protects our neighborhood against this type of development, and for example, B, which ensures adequate light, air, and open space. The next slide is a map from Cordilleras to Park. The proposed development is at the intersection of White Oak and Oakhurst. And I'm going to be showing photos from White Oak, from the proposed development to up and down the street. So the first home is the current home that's at 2015 of White Oak. It's a one-story rancher. This is the proposed development site. The next slide is our house at 2065, one-story rancher. The next house is Rick's and Letitia's, 2061, one-story rancher. The next house was remodeled. It's not quite 10,000 square foot lot. It's a single-story home of 3,000 square feet. You can see, because it's a rancher, it's one story, it fits in with the neighborhood. The next house is 2019, again, a one-story rancher. The next house is 2005. It's on the corner of White Oak and Park, one story. Across the street is 2004, again, one story. Up from that is 2056, one story. Across the street from us, on the corner of White Oak and Oakhurst is, yeah, that's right, of White Oak and Oakhurst is 2060, again, one story. On the other corner of White Oak and Oakhurst is 2100, one story. Up the street from that is 2110. And on the opposite side of the street, which is the side of the street of the development, that's up the hill on the corner of White Oak and Cordillera/Pearl, is 2145, again, one story. Go down the street, 2035, one story. And the house on the upslope of 2115 is 2125. Okay, pictures are worth 1,000 words. These homes just don't fit into the neighborhood. They don't have the same character as the neighborhood. We just really urge the Planning Commission to deny the application to subdivide. We're not opposed to building one home. The San Carlos Municipal Code and the General Plan, they protect against overbuilding, they preserve neighborhood character, they allow adequate light, space, and air, they ensure that the scale and design are compatible with surrounding homes. Adding a seventh home takes the area out of compliance with the general plan. This proposal sets a very dangerous precedent. It's a cumulative impact for both San Carlos and the White Oaks area. There'll be a lot of congestion and traffic on White Oak and Oakhurst. There's a safety issue because of a blind intersection at Oakhurst and White Oak. There'll be a decline in our property value due to tree removal. Especially mature trees add a lot to a property's value. And mature trees provide privacy and shade. So this is a bend in the road going down White Oak Way towards 2115. That's the slide on the left. The slide on the right is the blind intersection at White Oak and Oakhurst, and 2115 is right across the street. So all the neighbors that I've talked to are really concerned about the safety of kids and just, you know, having two homes at that site is just not smart at this intersection. So these are requirements for approval by the Planning Commission. Number one is whether the proposed subdivision is in conformity with the law and chapter. Number 2 is whether the size and shape of the proposed lots are in general conformance to the city requirements and the general pattern of the neighborhood and will not cause traffic, health, or safety. I've just shown you those slides. They'll cause traffic and safety hazards. They don't conform to the general plan. Adding another home takes the area out of zoning compliance with the general plan. Item 3 is whether the lots have proper and sufficient access to a public street. They do. Number 4 is whether the proposed map and design or improvement of the proposed subdivision are consistent with the applicable general and specific plans. 2115 and the 5 parcels that border it total of 40,150 square feet. Adding a 7th home takes the area out of zoning compliance with the general plan. Number 5 is whether the site is physically suitable for this type of development. Number 6 is whether the site is physically suitable for the proposed density of development. Adding another home increases the number of people, as Rick talked about, all the toilets are flushing. There's be a decreased parking space for cars. Already there's cars on Oakhurst that park on our street on White Oak. It's only going to get worse. With more cars, there's increased traffic and danger at the blind intersection. And 7 is whether the design of the subdivision or the proposed improvements are likely to cause substantial and environmental damage or substantially and avoidably injure fish or wildlife or their habitat. Birds and squirrels live in the ornamental pear trees, and they have nests. My husband will talk on that next. The development will cause the environmental damage, and birds and wildlife will lose their habitat. And this is finally is a parcel map of 2115 of White Oak and the adjacent homes. Thank you very much. It's a second.
Second one down. The second one down. Yeah, all right. Okay, and then go that one. Okay, is this the one, Tracy? Yeah. We hired an arborist to check out the trees in the area, and by the way, he called the tree that they want to remove jacaranda. By the way, I did want to bring up one little point that I didn't think about till the developer mentioned it. There were 2 meetings, outreach meetings to this about this property. The first one, I and a number of other neighbors were quite angry, and it was mostly neighbors were presented with this huge, look-alike project. And then there was a meeting on October the 6th. I checked my calendar, and that was a second meeting. And evidently the developer forgets about that. That was the date of it. And we met in front of the realtor who lives right across the street from the house who sold the property to him. And we met there, and they had more of an architectural plan of what they were showing they were going to build. But the meeting was stacked as far as I was concerned because it was just the friends, the other realtors, and there was hardly any neighbors whatsoever because when I looked in the meeting, I'd hardly anybody I recognized. So they might have got a better reception there because it was their friends. Anyway. Yeah, I don't see what I was going to show. Maybe I'll pass. Is there if I pass out some papers on this? This is what I really wanted to show.
We have that right now. Is that the protected trees? Is that?
I have extra ones.
Okay.
This is really the one I wanted to talk about.
Okay.
Okay, this is what this house that they want to replace looks like right now. This is the property, and I'm concerned about the trees in the area that they show. Now, they said about 30 feet of garden area with trees. Well, if they build these houses next to mine, I imagine that this house will be, the next one next to my house, will be probably 11 to 12 feet away. So instead of looking at this, I will see a wall 10 feet away from my house, 10 or 11 feet away. I think they measured it something like 5 feet, 10 inches, something like that, actually under 6 feet from their fence line to their wall. So this is what we're going to lose. So it has the higher arborist that we had mentioned about the coast live oak that they're talking about, very large in the back. There's 2 ornamental pairs, one on my side, one on their side. Theirs is 23 feet. These jacaranda trees, where they call them mimosa, maybe they go by different names. One's 20 feet, the other's 15. One of the trees they want to move out from the back is incense cedar. That's my arborist claims, and it's 60 feet tall, but it's near a redwood on the other neighbor's side. And he said that viewing all these from a distance, all these trees are within 5 to 10 feet from the fence line, showing a lot of squirrel and bird activity. And that there's, on this one page here, he's mentioned about, this is about tree removal. Let's see if I've got this one. Is that, I guess that one doesn't go with this. Anyway, it shows you on that paper all of the reasons why you would remove a tree, but this doesn't apply, except for the fact that you want to build a bigger house. And I have pictures of the trees in the area that on the property there, the jacaranda, there's the flowering pear tree, and there's live oak. And I think the one I really wanted to point out was, let's see, this one here, I believe. It shows in the center portion, there's a squirrel nest right up in the middle, and there's other ones around. But this one here was quite obvious. And anyway, we wanted to show that there was animals on the property living there, and I guess they're going to be evicted too. Anyway, the arborist permit says there's no reason to remove them or to cut them down except for the fact that they are, standing in the way of homes. They're over 60 years old, lots of shade and privacy. They're mature trees protected by San Carlos law, providing privacy, shade, increased property value, and make it much cooler. And each mature tree has an appraised value of somewhere between $1,000 to $10,000. So we'd like to keep our trees alive and keep the neighborhood environment as it was. And we think that we see a lot of building going on, and I think a lot of people are resentful of the fact that the San Carlos we used to know is going away. And my wife and I moved down to our property over 30 years ago from was a Daly City Ceremony neighborhood where the lots were only 33 foot wide and no trees, and we came down here to get away from that, and we hope to keep it as possible. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next speaker is Gwyneth Brown.
All right, so I'm going to try to keep this short and simple. Hello, my name is Gwyneth Brown, and I live across the street from where the houses will be built, 2060 White Oak Way. I worry about the safety hazards the construction of the houses will cause. The houses are located at the bottom of a blind hill, and I see many cars and bikes going down the hill above the speed limit. I'm afraid the extra traffic could result in an accident. I worry about the kids that I babysit. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. The next speaker card is Jeff and Mindy Trimmer.
Hello, I'm Jeff Trimmer. I live at 1380 Cedar Street with my wife, Mindy. Basically, at this point, I'm just piling on to what the other residents have already articulated, and that really is the concern about the densification, if you will, of the R6 zoned neighborhood of White Oaks. There are precious few 10,000 square foot lots in that area. I think this sets a terrible precedent for the loss of those large lots, the densification of the neighborhoods, and the hazards that that presents to all the children that actively commute to the schools that are in those neighborhoods. And I'll turn it over to my wife.
Currently in the El Sereno Corte neighborhood, there are only 66 lots left of 10,000 square feet or more. We have, I'm sure you've all seen this because you're city planners. This is our neighborhood. These are all of the lots. I'm happy to show you. But when it was mentioned that this is a tipping point, absolutely it is, because our 10,000 square foot lots have continued to disappear. We saw one on Kelton from 12,000 to 6,000 square foot lots. We're concerned, we live less than a half a mile away from this proposed subdivision, and recently, 2 houses over, there's a 10,000 square foot lot where the new owner is a developer and looking to subdivide. We just saw up on Wilshire Court, not in the El Sereno neighborhood, a 12,000 or 10,000 plus square foot lot to subdivide. All of these lots now are 5,000 to 6,000. How does that meet the R6 zoning ideal of the general plan, where you only have 6 lots per net acre of 7,200 square feet? These are making smaller lots, and combine that with the relaxed building codes from 2011, which allows larger homes on existing lots where many of the lots are very small. It puts the city in opposition by allowing the subdivision to its own general plan and what it wants for the city. So I urge the city to slow its roll, deny the subdivision, and let's look at this and see how we can build growth that is sustainable for everyone and really keeps the character of these neighborhoods and is not putting large homes 10 feet away from each other. We need the space that the large lots give the neighborhood. It's noise mitigation, so you're not right on top of your neighbor. It's just some space, more trees, more bushes, more light. How do you have light with a 2-story home 10 feet away? You can do it, but it's not pretty. You can also get light in a jail cell, but who wants to be there? So please just really consider the neighbors and not the contractors who are coming in and buying these lots. Maybe they can do it and make a 5,000 square foot lot, but it certainly does not fit the ideal or design of the general plan that the city itself designed. Please deny this. Thank you.
Next speaker, Kathy Reich, I think. That's how you pronounce it.
Hi, good evening. I'm Kathy Rich, and I live at, no, it's quite all right. I live at 2033 White Oak Way. I actually do have the 9,600 square foot lot with a 3,100 square foot 1-story house on it that fits very well in the neighborhood. I think that the pictures that my good neighbor Joyce showed you show that the proposed development clearly does not fit in the neighborhood, does not fit on the street at all. I won't reiterate all of the excellent points that my neighbors have made. I would just like to make one additional point and then 2 clarifications to Mr. Najamich's presentation. The first is the point Rick Tennyson raised about the sewer line, and there is an easement that runs along the back of my property and all the properties on the block, on that side of the block. It's not a minor issue. My husband and I bought our home a little under 6 years ago, and the city has been out 3 times to service that sewer line, including a time when it was a multi-day project that tore an 8-foot deep hole in my backyard. That is a sewer line that has a number of problems. I'd be interested to know whether the public works engineer has assessed the impact on that sewer line of splitting this lot and having 2 homes there instead of 1. It's certainly a concern for me because it has created problems in my backyard. The 2 clarifications, first of all, in regards to the October meeting, I was at that meeting. I think you can in no way characterize the opposition to this development as being just a small handful of people. It's with the exception of the realtor who sold them the lot, it's everyone I know on that street, and many of our neighbors throughout White Oaks as well, and I think that what you're hearing tonight at the hearing is reflective of that. The second thing I would say is that the map that the developer showed that he said claimed to show the footprint of the houses immediately surrounding is simply not accurate. We're all sitting here. We all own those houses, and we can tell you that is not an accurate reflection. I think that is not a fair slide to present. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker is John Nordy.
John Doherty, White Oak Way. I didn't expect to speak today because you made so many good points. Nothing that I could object to. When people are driving around this neighborhood and they're pointing out the single-story houses, they're talking about the adjacent. The adjacent to the right has two-story. Couple 3 doors up is two-story. I drive Oakhurst, two-story additions. I drive Park, two-story additions. If they say we can't put two-story additions on, you're setting a precedent saying nobody can put a two-story addition. And that's trouble. That's a slippery slope. That's people saying it's going to reduce the value of the property. I can't wait to add value to the property. These two houses will add value to everyone's homes. So with those rights, don't take those rights away. They meet the required rights this nice lady spoke of. Another thing is, a few people that have spoke today, they're enjoying their homes. And they've enjoyed their homes because of lot splits in prior years. That's all I need to say.
Thank you. Next speaker is Linda Matos, sorry.
Commission members, neighbors, Linda Matos. I live on Sunset Drive. I thought I'd introduce myself, a victim of developers. We have a home, 2 homes, hi Shannon, on our street. I invite you to come drive down my street and see what they have done to my street. We have a 4,000 square foot home being wedged into a lot. I can look out my window now and I can see these guys looking in my room. I never could see that before. There they are, looking in my house. Thank you very much. I'd also like to point out that I stood before you 2 years ago in opposition of what is going on with the overbuilding of San Carlos and these huge homes being crammed into these lots. I feel that you really need to address this and consider these people who've lived here for years. My neighbor can reach out and touch the wall of the home next to her because it's being built so close. She used to have a view. She now sees a wall. She used to have sunshine in her home. She no longer has sunshine in her home because she's got a 2-story house, 4,000 square foot, next to a 1,200 square foot home with another 1,200 square foot home on the other side. I'm sorry, it just breaks my heart to see this happening. You go up Sunset a little bit further, you'll see another 4,000 square foot home being crammed into a lot that should not be there. To quote one of the city council members, when asked, how would you feel if a home was being crammed into your neighborhood, taking away your view? To quote, I guess I would just be thankful for having had that view for 30 years and put up with it. Thank you.
Any other speakers? I ran out of speaker cards. Okay, can you fill it? Yep. Or why don't you come up and do and tell us who you are and fill out the speaker card afterward, please? Sure. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Melissa Rio Frio, and I live at 132 Wilshire Court, which was mentioned by Ms. Trimmer recently, and my home is next to the proposed development that Ms. Trimmer mentioned, and I'm at the meeting tonight because I and many of my neighbors are profoundly concerned about those homes as well. It's almost exactly the same situation. The homes on that block are very different from the buildings that are being proposed for that lot, and that lot is also being split. And so I'm really here to see what's going on and to indicate my support for these other neighbors and other neighborhoods, looking at the homes we have and the reasons that we moved to this city. being impacted negatively by these new developments. I am not against new developments that are in harmony with the neighborhood. I do feel that it's very difficult to reconcile what residents love and want out of their homes with what contractors want from the properties that they wish to develop. I understand it's a very difficult thing, but I feel very strongly, having lived here for 20 years, that if the homes that are being built next to my home, and you're going to get this plan pretty soon, it ruins my house, it ruins our neighborhood. I'm very deeply concerned. That's all. I'll fill out the card now.
Great, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Last call for speakers. Oh.
Move to close the public hearing.
Second.
Can I have a roll call vote on that, Lisa?
Did we get a motion in a second?
Yeah, public hearing.
Who is the maker of the motion, Scott, and the second?
Seconded.
Okay. Commissioner Marsters?
Yes.
Commissioner Silberman?
Yes.
Vice Chair Bergman?
Yes.
And Chair Gutierrez?
Yes. Okay. Who wants to start?
Nobody. Okay, well, I'll start.
We're added in the 2011.
So I have some questions and some thoughts. My first thought is that there's three things going on here. There's a lot split. There's the tree removal, and then there's the design review. And it sounded like everybody was looking at or suggesting that the lot split was the problem. And when I looked at it, I sort of feel like the lot split is not the problem. It's the size of the houses that are being built on those lots that don't necessarily fit in with the community. So I have a bunch of questions to ask, but that's sort of where I'm starting from at the moment. I understand that people have issues with trees being removed. Unfortunately, when you build houses, in a lot of cases, there's trees in the way, and especially when you expand houses, there's trees in the way. And the way we deal with that is we require them to put additional trees in. And again, looking at what's there and what's being removed, my personal feeling is that there's not enough trees going back in. And so that's another thing that I'd like to see. I was a little surprised at the size of the houses. My feeling is that they're too big relative to everything else that's in that area. When I went down and looked at it, there really weren't that many two-story homes. And the two-story homes that I saw were much smaller than the size of the homes that were being planned on being built there. That being said, I do have some questions now for staff. A couple of things that were mentioned, the sewer line. Have we inspected that sewer line? Do we know if it can handle?
Well, the application was routed to the Public Cities Engineering Division, and they reviewed it. They reviewed the project, and I don't know if there were any comments specifically related to concerns about the sewer line. Laura will speak to that in a little bit more detail if she has that information.
So in their review, they didn't express any concerns related to the capacity, but they were interested in the condition of the sewer line and the relationship between the sewer line and that oak tree that's in the back. So we added a specific condition of approval related to this, and that's on attachment 2, so on the draft code compliance and tree removal permit. So what we'd like to do is have the applicant investigate the condition of the sewer line at the rear of the property through video or other similar means as deemed necessary by the city engineer. And then if it's found by the community development director and city engineer that it's damaging the sewer line, then that tree could have to be removed. So otherwise, that coast live oak would be required to be preserved and protected with the project.
Okay. And I'm hoping that staff can clarify the idea of an R6.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
I've talked about this because
You've had this come up
I heard
before.
everybody talk about 7 homes doesn't fit in an R6.
I remember
And there are,
it was Eden Avenue, the lot split, yeah.
there are lots of places where you have many more homes than 6 in an acre, and
Yes, thank you. And thank you
Explain
for the
that.
opportunity. Thank you for asking that question, because what we find with other subdivisions that we've processed and that has been approved by the city is that there's a common misunderstanding about how the density calculation is applied to a specific site or to a specific area. So the way that it works that's in our code is by the lot itself. So when we do our density calculation, we look at the overall square footage of the individual lot and then apply the density calculation in that regard. And this is often referred to as net density. And in fact, if you look in our zoning ordinance, it has a definition for what net density is. What we heard this evening was an application of a formula that groups individual parcels together and then applies what is commonly referred to as gross density. And gross density includes roads, parks, any other areas, and it is used for, from a planning background, it's typically used for large subdivisions. So you can come up with a maximum density for a very large area. But when we're looking at an individual parcel, we use what is called net density. So the way that staff approach this application, of course, it involves a subdivision. So you take a look at the resulting square footage of each lot, and then you multiply that by a factor of 6. And under our rules of measurement, it allows you to either round up or round down. So anything, that's say 1.5 or above gets rounded up to say 2. And in this case, when you apply the density calculation, I believe it came out to 0.7, and you round up to 1. So that's how you get 1 home on each lot. So it's not done by grouping individual lots together and doing a calculation, because as you could imagine, depending upon where you draw that line or how far you extend that range, you're always going to get a different number. So we don't use that in calculating the density for a specific site.
thank you. Parking. It sounds like there's not a lot of parking here. I remember recently we required at the new subdivision up off San Carlos Avenue that garages were required to be available for parking. Since there is very little street parking here, I don't know if that's something we can do, but I'm looking at trying to figure out how to solve the parking issue.
That's something that the commission can condition to this project.
Okay. Let's see, what else did I have on my list here? I was a little disappointed in the fact that there's really not much landscaping between the 2 new houses. I'd like to have seen something there. I'd like to, at some point, talk about conditioning construction hours. And at some point, the way the 2, at least it looked to me like the way the 2 houses were lined up, and one of them, the first floor bedroom, lines up with the dining room of the other house, and that seemed odd to me. But I'd like to hear what my fellow commissioners have to say.
Kind of going back to the sewer line, it's 2033 White Oak, so that's 2 doors down. Is that correct? Where is she left? Okay. So I'm a little confused. I mean, it kind of logic would mean, would bring up that if there was issues really recently with that sewer line that's 2 doors down, wouldn't the city have more information on that currently? And wouldn't that have been scoped out? I think it sounds like that was like a whole day project, she said, and it's happened multiple times. I have troubles conditioning for something that I feel that probably is going to have another tree removal. And here we are looking at a tree removal permit, and losing one more at the back. I mean, it almost seems that we could have probably answered that question already. I mean, is there no other information on that sewer line that would help us with this with that potential question?
I believe that's the reason why the condition has been added, so that, it's a requirement that additional inspection occur, and if it's found that the oak tree is in fact causing some sort of damage to that sewer line, then the request by the engineering division is to remove that tree, so that, there's no further issue or potential issue if that's what the cause of that could be. But that particular segment of the line hasn't been inspected, so that's why it's a requirement under this proposal.
Let's see. If somebody else has a question, I'll jump in a second as well. What's another one?
So I'm going to make a suggestion at some point here, and maybe it's a good place for us to have a discussion, and that is my suggestion is to move forward with the lot subdivision and the tree removal, but deny the design review. And that would actually force it, unfortunately for David, to go to the RDRC for the designs of the houses, because I do not believe that the two houses that are there really fit in. And so I'm going to have trouble making finding E that the proposal is consistent with the applicable design review criteria. And so I think that unfortunately the houses have to get smaller in order to fit in with the neighborhood. I don't have an issue with splitting the lot, but I do have an issue with the size of the houses.
We should clarify that.
I have a hard time telling a property owner that they cannot build to the specifications of the code. I mean, it's because there's not a special, we don't have a special district saying White Oak Districts has special, only one-story homes. So I struggle with it because as a community member, I wouldn't want the homes there, but as, trying to enforce what's existing in the code, it's hard to say that they haven't met the requirements of the code, and if they're meeting the requirements of the code, how can they not be meeting the form of the neighborhood?
Except that it has to fit in and be compatible with the neighborhood, and the average size home in the neighborhood, as we heard, is about 2,000 square feet.
So, I mean, this is what I'm struggling with, and I know that you said that, you don't see the lot split as the issue, and perhaps what you mean by that is you don't see difficulty making the findings for the lot split. And, I mean, I agree with you, but I want to say, I think the developer did everything that they were supposed to do. It seems like they did a pretty good job of outreaching to the community. I don't think that anything they would have proposed on this property would have gotten the support of the community. And I get it. I mean, I hate it. I mean, I hate this project, and I hate the project because of the lot split. but I feel constrained by the code to allow the lot split. And then once you have the lot split, I mean, every single person who's in here, I mean, and we're all San Carlins, every single one of us, everyone on the days here is a San Carlin. We may not live in White Oaks, we may, but we all live in San Carlos, and with the economics of living in San Carlos, it may not be you, but every single house on that block eventually is going to be a 2-story. Every single one of them. Now, are they gonna go to within 5 feet of the lot line? You know, I don't know. I mean, we've been doing this now. All of us have been doing this for 2 to 3 years at least. Scott's been doing it for almost 6. I mean, I swear we've got a demolition and new construction, 2 of them every single meeting in front of the RDRC. I mean, every single house is going 2 stories. Every single house is being demolished. And for me, it's the lot split. It really is, and I don't know what to do about it. This is our 2nd lot split in 4 months. I think it's at least our 3rd lot split in the year, and I've disliked every single one of them. But you know, the developer purchases the property based on the existing code, and the existing code allows a lot split. So, you know, I'm pretty. I don't know if you can sense it, but I'm pretty frustrated at this point, and I don't really know what to do about it. You know, I want to follow the code. But I don't like this project, and it has nothing to do with the developer. I mean, they're doing what they're supposed to. I mean, they're trying to make money. They're allowed to make money. I mean, they're allowed to do that. And you know, if there was another vote among you to deny this project, I mean, I'd vote to deny it, even though I think it. Anyway, I'm struggling. And I'd like to see, frankly, I'd like to see some analysis from, and this is not a criticism of staff. Staff's just doing what they're supposed to too, because these projects do meet the code. I would like to see, you know, what other communities are doing as far as lot splits. I know that the county of San Mateo, at least my understanding is the county of San Mateo, there was a proposal to allow lot splits, and it was voted down. So, you know, I'd like to know whether this is sort of the community norm, if all the communities are allowing lot splits, because, you know, I would prefer not to be voting on them anymore.
I think the issue has to go to the city council.
Oh, yeah, it's a city council.
And what we need to do is to ask the city council to review lot splits, and because I feel compelled, like you say, I don't have an issue with the lot split simply because it's allowed. There's nothing that I can find in the lot split that I can say I can't do it. But there is in the size and the massing of the houses. To me, that's where I can look at it and I can use what's in the code and say it doesn't fit. And so that's why I say, you know, I don't have an issue with the trees, although I want a lot more planted. I don't have an issue with the lot split. But I look at it and I say the only way I can make this smaller is to use the fact that it doesn't fit in with the surrounding homes.
Is there a way we can split this? Can we? Because frankly, I don't think there's any way that we can deny the lot split. I don't think there's anything in the code that would give us grounds to deny the lot split, but it's questionable on the sizing and massing of the houses. So usually these things come up separately, and I would like to see the ability for it to go back to design review and possibly for them to work with the neighborhood more.
And that's why it's usually done separately, but.
Trying to do.
Yeah, but, you know, I imagine, again, you know, the developer's credit, they heard that folks wanted to see the houses side by side.
Yeah.
We just dealt with this on Carmelita with the lot split. Thank you very much, folks. I appreciate that. And, you know, they actually were probably trying to meet what staff recommended was probably the best way to approach it. But, I mean, I get it.
Can I say
I
something?
actually have a question if we could.
You know, I always, this is sort of like a broken record, but you're correct to focus on the findings that you need to make for the lot split. You haven't really touched on the findings in design review except some of the criteria that you're talking about in design review are related to the findings in the design review. And then there's just the tree removal permit is the third action you're being asked to focus on tonight. This came up, I understand from staff, in a consolidated review manner. So it wouldn't actually go back down to design review. It would, if you approve it, all the actions tonight could be appealed to the city council. If you deny any one of them, the developer could appeal that one up to the city council. So the next step would be city council review. A lot of times, planning commission needs more information in order to make findings. Or the planning commission on the design review application might say there's something about the design that I think, and some of those issues have been brought up already, that is making it so it's difficult for me to make the findings for design review, or to say that the project conforms with the criteria. But those are the options you have. I mean, so you could take each one of them as a separate action. So you could take separate actions. If you can't make the findings on one of those, we can discuss, when you get to that particular motion, what further information you might need, redesign or landscaping, whatever you think you need to help you evaluate the design review of the project, and make the findings for that part of the approval.
So could we make one or two of the findings and then send the other one back to staff to work with the applicant?
Well, I think what we would do, right, is we'd make findings on whatever we could make, and then we either deny or we continue the remaining part, right?
Deny, continue, or formulate conditions that would enable you to make the finding.
Would that include sending it back to staff to work with the applicant?
Well, between, if you were going to decide to continue it, then if there was direction that you wanted to provide, the staff would certainly work with the developer.
In the same way that Carmelita went back to staff and was brought to a future date. Okay.
But if you deny, I mean, you can continue it for a bit, but if you deny it, the finality of the decision at the Planning Commission has occurred, and then it can be appealed up to the City Council.
All right, this is fun. Lots of fun. Does anybody want to take a shot at it?
Can we take each of these individually?
I'd say we break it into three parts at least.
Does anybody have any findings that they can't make for the lot split?
Well, I mean, there's the safety issue. I mean, it has to do, I think, in part with position of the driveway. But, you know, we're basically setting up a situation where with the lot split, the second driveway on the house that I think is, I'd say it's to the east, is going to basically have to back into that street. I mean, that would be a basis to deny the lot split. That's the only thing I could think of as a basis to deny the lot split. And I think we'd even need more information in order to do that.
Yeah.
And frankly, I think they probably could position the driveway to the far, you know, the far western portion of the property to avoid that, probably.
And that could be done in design review.
Yeah. Otherwise, like I said, I mean, I wish there was.
Yeah, I don't see any finding that we can't make for the subdivision.
Okay, how about for the tree removal?
I mean, the tree removal, the finding that supports the tree removal is you can't really put two houses on the lot without removing the trees. How about that? So, so if you're going to put two houses on them, then yeah, I think that you probably do have the findings for the tree removal permit, and you can add more trees, but
not necessarily. You could the design review comes into play. You could set back further. You could so that's where design review kind of comes into play as well. Quite frankly, the only finding that I can or the only one that I can do without any regret is the split, because it's pretty clear.
I think the tree removal, I mean, one of the things under right here on the tree removal permit information, one of the reasons is to allow reasonable economic or other enjoyment of the property. I mean.
Yeah, but I get that. That's the subjective part, I think, that could probably be made for most of any situation. That's the one that we always have a problem with, actually.
Which is why I always ask that we put more trees, because eventually those are, you need to replace what gets taken down.
So right now what they're doing, is it a 1 for 2? I mean 2 for 1?
I'm not happy with the placement of the trees, but that is sort of dependent upon design review. And I want to make sure that the trees are put in such a way as to provide the maximum screening between any of the neighbors and provide shade and things like that. And when I looked at it, I wasn't really happy with enough trees or the placement of the trees.
One of the things that concerns me about trees, and I'm not sure if the pictures of the ones were actually wanted to be removed or not, the ones that have nests in them, birds' nests and squirrels' nests. I mean, I'd like to see a condition that those trees not be removed during, breeding and all that stuff. I want the chicks and everything out of the nest and that kind of thing. I'd like to see that conditioned. I know it's really a small thing, but I just look at this.
I think this might be, my first impression of that question is it might be something that you need more evidence on, because I don't know I've heard the statements from the public that they're concerned that there might be wildlife nests or in the trees, but we don't really have the type of evidence I usually like to rely on for that type of condition. But it is something you could ask for more information on, or you could require, I guess you could require that the applicant obtain a report to the satisfaction of staff that there are no active nests at the time that the trees are removed. So I think you could do that.
Okay.
So Scott, are you, you've got consensus on probably 1 right now, right? You think?
The lot split?
Yeah.
And probably the tree removal. Do we, yes, no on the tree removal? Sure.
I think that.
I would like to see a condition on the tree removal to ask for the report.
Well, if that's okay, I know we have a condition on the tree in the back as well.
Yeah.
I'd like to get more information on that one. I think that question can be answered. Is it, in fact, going to need to be removed or not? I think it kind of plays the whole overall picture on tree removals. I
would say that if we're gonna grant the lot split, and I want to be heard one last time on that before we vote, and what I'm assuming is going to continue it for design review, I don't see any point in not continuing it for the tree removal as well, because depending on what they do with the design, it may impact what the deal is with the trees. So if the pleasure of the planning commission is to grant the lot split, but then consider have more time to consider the design review, then I think that should be the motion.
Okay, and I think in the meantime, we can also answer the question about the tree in the back. That could be taken care of.
Providing maybe some guidance on what's going to be continued, it sounds like.
Meanwhile,
So what's our guidance going to be for design review? I don't think we can say you can't put a 2-story home there. I don't think that's in our purview. What are we?
I think we can say that the houses have to fit in with the neighborhood better. I just don't feel like, based on the size and the massing, that they just don't fit.
I would agree. I can't.
I gotta be honest. I have to be honest with you. I want to agree with that. I really do. I really don't like this at all. But I have a hard time saying if something meets and actually exceeds the requirements that the owner, I mean, they have the right to build to code.
So Shannon, I mean, I agree with you. I agree with you, and this goes back to my comment earlier is, and I'm not speaking about, I don't want to make this personal, but like all of those houses are eventually going to be 2-story, and it's just the way it's going to be, whether any of us like it or not, and it is to the code. I think like you, I hate it. I mean, it's a transition time, right? I mean, we deal with this with all of our developments, whether they're houses or anything else. We have to look at what the code allows and what's going to happen over time. And yeah, right now, they don't fit in very well, but they probably will in 5 or 10 years. I mean, I guess the idea is, and I don't disagree with Jesse or Scott either, is that, I mean, we could transition it more softly, right? I mean, I think that's what they're pushing for. It's not that they're saying that nobody's going to be able to build a code, but, the developer happens to, have, made a poor economic decision to try and build monster homes when there aren't any monster homes yet. And had they waited another 5 or 10 years until there were more houses of that size, it might have gotten approved. But they're not willing to do it now, and I get that. So I don't think we're going to convince Jesse or Scott, because they're reasonable, as much as I hate to admit it.
Gets back to we hate lot splits, so we've pretty much
it gets back to the lot split, and I'm gonna we're gonna vote on that shortly, and I'm gonna vote for it, even though I want to vote against it. And the only reason I'm voting for it is, I feel in the past, I think there was actually a prior lot split that I voted against in a very similar situation to this, and then the neighbors appealed to the city council. I think actually you and I both voted against it. And they appealed to the city council and they lost, and I kind of feel like my voting against it encouraged them to to perform what was frankly probably an idle act. It was pretty expensive, so I don't want to, as much as I want to vote against this, I don't want to give the community the hope that if they appeal it to the city council that it's likely to get reversed, because I think the findings are there. So anyway, if you want someone to make a motion, I'll make a motion, which I think is just the tentative parcel map, right? Yeah. So I move that the Planning Commission, with a heavy heart, I move that the Planning Commission approve the tentative parcel map, and that design review and the protected tree removal permit for the project at 2115 White Oak Way be continued to a date uncertain, and that the motion with respect to the tentative parcel map is based on the findings and for the reasons incorporated in the staff report, and as conditioned in the tentative parcel map certificate and code compliance certificate.
I'll second that.
Okay, can we have some discussion so that we can give staff direction as far as the design review? Can we do that now, or should we do it afterwards?
You should do it now.
And before I forget, because I'm going to forget, does anyone else want to know what other communities do about lot splits?
Yeah, absolutely.
Can we get a report back from staff as soon as reasonably possible what other communities are doing about lot splits?
Yes.
Please.
And what I prefer, and I know the motion's already been moved and seconded, but I prefer we select a date certain so that everyone has, on these types of applications, a deadline to provide you with the information you need, and it doesn't require renoticing and all the other issues that go with that.
Okay. Well, what does staff propose for a date certain? Sometime in May.
Can we?
Yeah.
Can we also incorporate the developer as far as the timeline?
Well, why don't we do discussion right now? I think it's going to probably bring up a few things that maybe might provide some direction on timing and all that stuff. since we have a motion, but let's just discuss it and maybe talk about the design review part of it.
Want me to start with the list of things that I have so far?
Scott, you can always start. You know, I like when you start because you pretty much hit everyone, so and then none of us have to talk.
Parking, requiring potentially looking at the garage, being able to make sure that they park cars. This fire hydrant that's sitting in front, I'd like to know whether there will be on-street parking in front of both of these houses. Let's solve the sewer line and the oak issue. Prior to that, I mentioned the compatibility of the two houses internally, the first floor of one bedroom lining up with a dining room of another. As far as any of the trees, we want to put a condition about no active nests in there. Let's see, the lining of the orientation of the driveway for one of the lots. Want to look at the landscaping and make sure that there are more trees and more screening between the homes adjacent to the project and within the project. Potentially limit construction hours to 8 to 6 on Monday through Friday, 9 to 5 on Saturday, like we've done at other things that are strictly residential. And then the last thing is really the overall massing of the project and how we make the two houses much more compatible with the surrounding single-family homes.
So I would like to see a rendering when you guys come back, whatever it is, whether it's the same houses or different houses. I'd like to see renderings that incorporate the neighbors' houses. I mean, we're seeing that at RDRC. And, you know, for single houses, not nearly as significant as these. It might help, might hurt, I mean, but it might help.
I just have one, and that is, I think it speaks to the neighborhood that there's so many people that showed up for this, and I think it's really important to re-engage them and work with them and get their input. It makes it much easier to approve design review when you've got more than one person saying we're for it. So it's important to kind of go back to that neighbor. I mean, it's 8:45 and this place was half packed, and that says a lot. So I would encourage that as much as possible. And I know you guys have been before us on other things, and that's generally your nature. So I would encourage that as much as possible.
With all due respect to Scott, and it's not going to be any work for the developers. I'd observed that I didn't participate in the San Carlos project where you required folks be able to park in their garages, but I'd be apprehensive about requiring that in a development like this, because every single home that comes in for a two-story, are we then going to require them to provide parking in their garage? I would love to.
I think it's already in the code.
Yeah.
See, that's where we didn't really have to argue, but it's already in the code. So it's the
there's nothing in the code that's going to
that we were arguing.
Then if that's the case, then 70% of the people who live in San Carlos, now that's a made-up statistic, but 70% of the people in San Carlos are violating the code.
70%.
I don't want to be in a situation where every single second story we add, we're requiring people to allow parking in their garage permanently.
And I'm flexible with that. That's a suggestion for one way of dealing with the parking.
It's in the code.
I think when we had this discussion last time, what it came down to is that it usually comes to neighborhood enforcement. Like if the neighbors feel that the garages are not being used for cars, and they have recourse. Because of the way the code
we spent quite a bit of time on this one, on that particular development, because that was mentioned, but it's in the code. It's more of an enforcement issue, and in contrast, 70% of the people in San Carlos aren't building new homes. So, some of these houses only had one-car garages. So I get your point, David, but it's already in the code, so there's not much we have to do on that. We don't have to spell it out because it's already spelled out. So,
And I do also want to say that I'm not opposed to second stories. It's the combination of the second story and the massing that is the issue.
that's a pretty good discussion for subdivision.
Yeah. Do we have, does the developer want to be heard based on what we've indicated about how long you're going to need to decide whether you want to try and redesign the houses, and if you do decide to redesign the houses, how much time you need to do that to get back to us?
The date that you're mentioning, is that, what is that date?
That would be the date that you came back to the Planning Commission for what would presumably be a final decision on design review and tree removal. You don't have to pick a particular day, mostly just like a month or part of a month. Beginning or end.
They want
So what do we got in May for Planning Commission?
May 2nd and 16th.
Can I, since I believe my motion may have already been seconded, I'm not sure if can I offer a friendly amendment to my motion to continue the latter two items to a date certain, specifically May 16th?
A second.
Did you hear that, Lisa?
Yes. Commissioner Marsters?
Yes.
Commissioner Silverman?
Yes.
Vice Chair Bergman?
Yes.
And Chair Gutierrez?
Yes.
I'm sorry, I was distracted just for a second. I'd like you to reopen the hearing for the next, so it's open at the next time, so you can hear testimony on the information that you hear at the next meeting.
I further move that we reopen the public hearing.
Second.
Commissioner Marsters?
Yes.
Commissioner Silverman?
Yes.
Vice Chair Bergman?
Yes.
Chair Gutierrez?
Yes. Okay. Does everybody know what we did here?
I can summarize the subdivision was approved. We've continued to May 16th, both the design review and the tree removal permits. You've given guidance to the applicant and to staff, and you've kept the public hearing open for the next hearing on May 16th on those two items that have not been approved.
Thank you. Okay. Well, go ahead.
One last thing. Can we send a message to the city council saying that this is an issue for the planning commission and that it's something that we'd like to have looked at again?
Well, I mean, that's what I'm trying to do by asking for information from staff. I mean, my intention is if there's any argument that we can make to make lot splits more difficult, whether it's extend the minimum lot size to 7,000 or 8,000 square feet or something else, I mean, I think it would come as a recommendation from us to the city council to a change for a change. And I'd like to start looking at that.
I'm not sure we can do that as much as ask the city council and have it come back to us from the city council.
We can have staff prepare. Not that they love preparing extra reports, but David was asking for what other cities and municipalities were doing in forms of lot splits. So it'd be good to have that information, so that way we could make a recommendation that the city council look at that more regularly, so we can possibly make some zoning changes. I mean, I agree. Every lot split, it's the same discussion, and our hands are tied on a subdivision when it's meeting all the criteria. Design reviews, is design review for that very matter, and it gives us a little bit of leeway. But we haven't done a subdivision that we actually like, but there's nothing that we can do about that right now. So, and I would agree, David. I think that we need to revisit this, and we need to revisit it as fast as possible. Because I think somebody said there was 66 of these lots left.
Well, There's a couple of ways to do that. One is, what I hear from the commission
Are you going to
is...
say moratorium?
No, I wasn't going to say
Emergency
that.
ordinance.
No, what I'm hearing the commission say is really the policy of the general plan and the current zoning ordinance is something you want to look at.
Yeah.
And so there's a couple ways to do that. One is you could individually ask council members to see if that could be something that could be placed on a city council agenda, to see if there is an appetite, at least by the council member that you spoke with, to bring it up, or ask fellow council members if it's something they want to look at from a policy standpoint. The second way to approach it is at your level, and I don't know how much staff time this would take to get this before you as a study session item. How many of these lots are there that could possibly be subdivided? There's been a lot of possible speculation. We know it's only lots that are 10,000 or more, and some of them can't meet the requirements even though they're over 10,000, whether it's slope or width or some other standard that they can't meet. So it may be that the universe of lots isn't as big as we're worried about. It may be that there are more than we're worried about. It may be geographically focused. It could be citywide. So it's a project that would take some time for the staff, I'm sure, to bring before you, but that would be the other way to do it.
And would be only lots in the R6, because R3 has a different lot size. Right. So it would only be R6 lots over 10,000.
I've already spoken to 2 city council members, so I can't speak to any more of them. How
about I'll speak to a couple? You tell me who you've talked to. Yeah, I think that's probably the fastest approach. It happens every time we have a subdivision request, and it's gut wrenching. I grew up in the area as well, and it's a different city, but that's not always a bad thing.
So I don't want to belabor the point too much. Because I don't want you discussing too much about what you might do and what factors you'd be considering. But right now, I think what I've heard is the commission is going to individually lobby council members to see if there's some policy direction that they would take it up, or so that you would have direction.
But I would like to see at least, I recognize certain things would be more difficult, for example, figuring out how many lots could actually be split. But I think we could find out really quickly whether we're well within the mainstream of peninsula cities versus sort of out. And I think we're going to need to make our case in order, I'm going to have to make my case in order to change the plan. And so, I'd like to see that if we could, please.
Great. You done with that? Anything else? Great. So thank you, and we'd encourage the members of the community to talk to the city council if that's a continued concern. We're going to see design review again, but city council needs to hear about this as well. They're hearing right now if they're watching, but it'd be nice to get the public to talk to them about that as well. So we're moving along. The good news is that item B was pulled from the agenda. So we're moving along to reports, correspondence, and general information. Report on recent city council actions.
Item B was pulled from the agenda.
Yes, and for the record, if we can go back to item B, just so that I can place it on the record, the applicant has actually requested a continuance to the Planning Commission hearing of April 18th. So that's when that item will come back before the commission.
Great, thank you.
So are we going to renotice that, or is that something you want the council to continue?
Do you want us to continue it to a date certain?
Ordinance was approved till September.
Yeah, that's what you
What's the date?
April 18th.
I move that we continue 595 Industrial Road and 810 to 850 East San Carlos Avenue. Item 6B to April 18th, a date certain.
I'll second.
Commissioner Marsters?
Yes.
Commissioner Silverman?
Yes.
Vice Chair Bergman?
Yes.
And Chair Gutierrez?
Yes. Okay, report on recent city council actions.
Yes, the City Council took action to adopt the formula business ordinance that was presented to the Planning Commission along with your recommendations. And if the city attorney can clarify, but they adopted it based upon revisiting it
in August.
It's got a provision that it's automatically sunsets. But you will, because of the date that was selected, September 13th, the review is going to happen sooner rather than later. So you may, or I'm not sure if you'll see it because of the way it was structured, but the city council is going to review it at a minimum, probably the middle of the year, late May, early June, perhaps.
Great. That's it? Okay. Yes. Planning Commission comments or reports?
Nothing for me.
Nothing for me either. Correspondence?
We had quite a bit of correspondence come in this evening on the item that you just heard, and all of that has been provided to the commission and is part of the administrative record on file.
Great. Planning staff comments, reports, and updates of current projects.
And no updates for this evening. It looks like we may have a couple of items coming back to you, not coming back to you, but our next regular hearing is actually on the 21st. And at this point, there's a potential that it could be canceled. I have to check with staff to see if any items are ready to be presented. But at this point, there's nothing substantial kind of at this point in the queue.
Great, thank you. Meeting adjourned.